So the streets are talking, Victor.
Hey,
Get him, daddy.
don't you walk on me.
Hello.
Hey, Chris, how you doing?
Hey, Victor, how you doing?
Good, man. Good. How's your weekend going?
Not too bad. Not too bad. Just running around with the little one a lot. I got a 3-year-old here at home, so
Oh,
it keeps me
gotcha.
on my toes.
Nice. Yeah, my son will be 3 in October, on October 15th.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. So yeah,
Very good.
the running around is a very real thing.
I tell you, man, it keeps you on your toes, though. It keeps you in shape.
Definitely. So, have you been fishing at all recently?
Oh yeah.
You go out a lot,
this-
right?
I do. I mean, I go out. In the summertime, I'm a teacher, so in the summertime is really my prime time to fish. So I fish a lot in the summer, just because it's just when I have the free time the most, and then the rest of the year it's late nights. Especially with the little guy now. I gotta sneak out while everybody's asleep and sneak back in before they all wake up.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm a teacher too, actually. What do you teach?
Oh, that's great. I work with kids with autism. I work in Sheepshead Bay, Brooklyn.
Oh, nice. Yeah, Pete actually mentioned that to me now that I'm thinking about it. Yeah.
Right.
Hey, everyone. Before we dive into today's episode, I want to tell you about something special that we've built at the Brooklyn Fishing Club. Our new membership program is live, and it's the best way to support the podcast and get some incredible perks. When you join, you'll unlock 2 bonus podcast episodes every month, 20% off all gear in the shop, and even a free Brooklyn Fishing Club hat and t-shirt just for signing up. It's only $100 for the year, and it connects you with one of the strongest fishing communities out there. Head to brooklynfishingclub.com and join today.
Thanks. What do you teach?
I teach ELA, so I've taught 8th grade ELA primarily.
Okay. Yeah. I've worked in special education. This is my 25th year, so
Wow,
I've
God
worked in
bless you.
different aspects. Yeah, yeah. I'm on the home stretch though. So.
Yeah, you're almost there. Then you can go down to Florida and join Pete permanently.
Oh man. Well, I don't know that I can live down there permanently, but I'll definitely be down there. No doubt about it. It's such a nice fishery down there, just so well. So when you compare it to us, it's like fishing in an aquarium, and it's just so much better managed as well.
I know the management down there is really on point, right?
It's just when you compare it to here, even just access, and those guys cry about access. I mean, and they've got such when I go down there, I'm like, the access is just incredible compared to what we have here. It's just such a fishy state, and just like everybody's. I guess it's maybe the areas that I go to down there, but just everybody has a play in they're all down there. Everybody's fishing,
Yeah.
Whether it's casual guys or lunatics like us.
Yeah, right. So one of the first things I wanted to ask you about that comes to mind is these proposed new regulations for stripers. What do you think about all this?
Well, I think it's a shame that we're in this position, and I think it's a shame that we're all so divided, even between the recreation for hire guys and just us surfcasters and the commercial fishery. It's a long time coming. I mean, the writing's been on the wall for a long time, and it's and everybody points fingers at everybody and says it's this person, that fault, their fault, or there's nothing wrong with the fishery right now. And I can tell you just from I've been fishing since I was a little kid, and I mean, and surf casting since I was 10 years old off the beaches in Rockaway. I grew up one house off the beach in Rockaway, and
Oh, wow.
and I fished right before the moratorium. Is like when I was really getting into fishing. As a surf caster, like hitting the beach like every night or every day, and I can tell you that things are not okay. We can point fingers and say whose fault it is, and really I think it's the management of it all is really at fault. This is a fish that's literally in our backyards. We know so much about this fish compared to say other fish, compared to say like tuna or even bluefish. I mean, we know exactly when they spawn. We know exactly where they spawn. And like we should be it shouldn't be where it's at,
Yeah.
We're just, and it's very simple. We're killing too many fish. That's the simple, whatever way you want to reach to where we need to have it to where it's sustainable or have an abundance. I mean, there should be an abundance of this fish. I mean, you have A 55 pound, I remember reading like a 55-pound bass will lay something like between 4 and 5 million eggs. Like that's insane. And obviously all those eggs are not going to hatch, but I mean, even if just 2% of them hatch, I
Right.
mean, we shouldn't be in this position. It's crazy that it's been so mismanaged. And I come from, the recreational side, but my family, like I have ties to Sheepshead Bay. My family, they owned and operated, restaurants along Emmons Avenue and boats. I worked on the party boats. My uncle owned a party boat. And in high school, I was a mate on those boats, and I see it from that aspect of it too. And you don't want to see people lose their livelihood, but if there's no fish, we're not going to have a livelihood. I'm not going to be able to sell fishing lures, and we're not going to be able to do the things we want to do if we don't have a fishery. So we've all got to, we've got to come together and realize that these fish are worth more alive than they are dead, and we're at that point of trying to recover. It's going to be real difficult. I kind of compare it to like having, say, an apple tree in front of your house. Again, in the bass, they're in our backyards. Like we know so much about them. Like how we can't manage this better. It's just ridiculous. And like having an apple tree in front of your yard. Every fall you're going to have this abundance of beautiful apples as long as you take care of that tree. But like say one year you pick off too many apples, and at the very top you see these big juicy luscious apples, and you want them and you can't get to them. So you decide, I'm going to cut the tree down and I'll get those big, juicy, those best of the apples. And then the next fall comes around and, you're staring at a dead tree and you're wondering why there's no more apples growing. That's kind of like where we're at. We're cutting down that tree, and you're going to look at it like, what are you, stupid? Of course there's no more apples on it. You killed it all. But I think that's where we're kind of like at, and I know a lot of people have like this false sense of reality. You see things on social media, you see party boats posting, oh, we there's fish all over the place today, and guys that I well respect, guys that have been in this game a lot longer than I've been surf fishing for over 40 years now. And there's guys that I respect, and I just completely disagree with their philosophy of just, we're hopeless optimistics about the fishery because we're fishermen. You can't help but to be a hopeless optimistic,
Yeah.
we're those guys that are like, one more cast, and we just have it in us. Like we don't want to always admit that it's not as good as it should be. And, you see things on social media, you see guys posting these big fish. I'm part of that, but what you don't see is that, they fish for 9 hours and you got one good fish, and you see party boats, that posting, oh, we crushed them today, there's fish all over the place. Well, you took your boat and you parked it on top of a school that you found with all your high tech, and your crew, jigged up a bunch of great fish. But that doesn't mean that the fishery is good. And even I've seen things where, again, if I'm going on, I'm passionate about this end of things. So feel free to interrupt me. But I've been out there, and you see, like, sometimes you'll be out there and you think that everything is so bad, and then all of a sudden this school comes by, and it's just like, you're like, holy cow, the fishery's not that bad. Look at all these fish. It's incredible. There's like an acre full of bass. And what you forget is that there used to be acres upon acres upon acres upon acres of bass running all the way from Maine to all the way down to the Carolinas. And now we're seeing isolated schools, and it's, you can have that false sense of reality when that body of fish is in your neighborhood and you think that everything is great. But when you start to look at it, it's not that many fish. What you're seeing seems like an incredible amount of fish, but you're sitting on that body of fish. And when you talk to other guys and then you find out, like, your fall was great, but nobody else had a fall run, that it shouldn't be like that. And like I said, when I was younger, I fished like the beginning when I started surf casting. It was like the years leading up to the moratorium. It was terrible. And even then, as a kid, I was a 10-year-old kid. I'd walk down to the beach with my Red Bull waders and a couple of bucktails in my pocket, like in the flap of my waders. Like that wouldn't go down with a plug bag. And I wasn't looking at tides. I wasn't looking at winds. I just look out my window because I was right on the beach. I'd be like, oh, that looks like fishy water. And I'd be able to manage. I'd work all the jetties all the way down until like Reese Park, what we call the clock jetty. But I'd work from Bell Harbor. I'd work every single jetty and almost get like 2 fish, and then work my whole way back again. And I couldn't do that now with all the knowledge that I have now and get that many fish. And I did it as a 10-year-old kid. And and just because I can catch a lot of fish, or not even a lot of fish, I can pick a couple of big fish. But like a 10-year-old kid is not going out on the beach in the middle of the day right now, and in September, and working the jetties and coming home and telling his mom that he caught a dozen fish because they're not there. And that's the problem. And you can have these 6-pack charter guys who've been fishing for 30 years, who can manage, to pick out a couple of fish because they're damn good fishermen. And you can have these party boat guys who can park on top of a school of fish and because they know what they're doing. But the average Joe, it's not what it's not what it was, and it's not what it should be. So I'm just, and it breaks my heart because I want my son to be able to, when he's older, I want him to be able to catch a couple of 50s. I want him to be able to do the things that I was able to do, and I don't know that that's going to be the case. So I hope they can get it straightened out before it's too late. But I sit in on a lot of these meetings and I hear a lot of the guys arguing. I hear a lot of the representatives making arguments. And it just seems like right now we're at the stage of like everybody's just trying to get the largest piece of the pie that they can. And everybody's arguing because they want to be able to get what they consider their share at killing these fish. And, it's a living resource. You're going to have to adjust. You're going to have to change things. There's so many variables besides us overfishing. There's environmental factors and there's all these things. You're going to have to constantly adjust, and to adjust for these changes and for guys to be like, we're not giving anything up. We've given up enough. We're not going to. Well, you have to because there's not going to be anything left. But I think some guys, and I've worked with these guys. I've been on these boats, and I think some of these guys have a very short-term memory and just, they're kind of looking at it like, I got to get a peace of mind, and they're not thinking about the future. They're not thinking about their kids. My uncle would have loved to have passed his boat down to me. I would have loved to have run his boat, but we sold the boats in Sheepshead Bay because there was no more fish. Everything was mismanaged, and it wasn't because we didn't have the customers. It wasn't because there was a great fishery. It stopped because there was nothing to fish for anymore. There was no more flounder. There was no. Think of Sheepshead Bay, like there used to be mackerel fishing. You go out for cod. You go out for ling. You go out for flounder. There's no fishery for that anymore. And it just puts more. If the striped bass crash, it's just going to put more pressure on the rest of the fishery. We're going to see it just going down the tubes, in my opinion.
Yeah,
I know there's a lot of guys who are going to disagree with me, but listen, that's okay. But I think we all have to really think about that. These fish, just the simple thing, we got to stop killing as many as we are. We've got to give them time to recover. It's not an endless resource. You think it would be with the amount that with the control that we could have over these fish. It should be a boundless, endless fishery. But unfortunately, they're in our backyard, and they're so accessible, and it's just their proximity to our stupidity has really left them in bad shape. It's a shame.
So what do you think? You think we have to completely go no harvest?
I mean, again, listen, I'm a selfish guy as far as that. That's what I want to see. That's what I want to see, and I think that's what we're going to have to see. But again, I'm not a scientist, but we can't continue what we're doing, and in the marine fisheries, they just kick the can down the road, and they've made, there's always like 3 choices you can make. There's the best choice, there's a middle of ground choice, and there's the worst choice. And I feel like they keep making the worst possible choice. I think like the idea with the slot was a good decision at that time, but you can't keep allowing like certain states to freaking have these conservation equivalencies, like that's got to stop. Like, you've got a percentage and you're allowing these states to finagle, like states like New Jersey, weaseling their way in. They constantly. And, and they tout themselves as like this conservation state because it's a game fish, but it's just ridiculous. The conservation equivalencies, what they let them get away with, And I think you've got to end with that. And I think the only way you're going to recover is, and I hate to see it because, you want to see, my family was involved in that, in the fisheries, as far as having boats. And we had a restaurant that really depended on, people being out on Emmons Avenue. And a huge part of our business was the people that came in on those boats. And I know, but we have to start looking at it in a different way, just kind of like even what Florida does, let's say, you look at what the fishery is and all of a sudden you release a couple of like tags, you get like your snook tag down in Florida, and you can fish for a little bit for the striped bass, but we've got to give them time to recover. At least we got to get, stop with killing all the bunkers, stop with polluting the water. And there's a lot of things that we have to do to help these fish rebound. But I think we've got to go in a step of the direction of where we're going to have to at least stop killing as many as we are. It's just, It's crazy, and I think really what it's going to come down to, it is going to be coming down to just shutting it down, because we don't have the resources, because we had the opportunity to have a fishing license, but, we had people out on the East End who fought that. And that's why we have that, whatever that thing is, the marine fishing. It's not a license, but the registry, and so we don't have like with Florida. I go down to Florida and I'm down there for 2 weeks. I get stopped like 4 times
Right.
by the flood. I've been fishing by me. I haven't been stopped in 20 years. I haven't been stopped, and I'm fishing like nonstop. And the fact I go down to Florida for 2 weeks and I get stopped like
It's
almost
crazy.
5 times.
They're all
It's crazy.
over it. They're all
Right,
over it.
but they have a license, and so that goes towards the resources, and if we would have had a license, we did. That opens us up to federal dollars, which allows us, the excise tax, things that I pay, that old tackle shops and tackle makers they pay, it goes into a federal fund that helps for conservation and for all these things. New York doesn't get a bigger piece of that pie because part of the rule of that is that you have to charge for a license, whether it's you charge $1 or not. You have to charge, and that opens you up to more federal dollars, which we could use. We could use for conservation. We could use for enforcement, and there's zero enforcement here. So, and part of what they don't take into consideration is the amount of poaching that goes on. I mean, I fish urban areas. I mean, your Brooklyn Fishing Club, you guys do. I mean, a lot of we see the amount of poaching, and it's not even taken into any consideration. So
yeah.
Whatever they do, I mean, if there's nobody to sit there and watch the store, I mean, and there isn't. I mean, if I haven't been stopped and I'm fishing, I know I fish at late at night and I fish some oddball places, but the fact that I haven't been stopped in 15, 20 years is absolutely ridiculous.
Right.
It's just such a broken system. I mean, it's crazy. You imagine. I mean, yeah, but. Yeah, so I think we're going to have some drastic changes, and I know a lot of guys are going to sit there listening to this and be like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. And maybe I don't, but I've been at it long enough, and I most certainly know that the 10-year-old me would not be able to go down to the beach right now like I used to be able to, and
right.
and put a dozen fish under my belt. And that tells me that there's something wrong.
So,
and that was not at the heyday of striped bass fishery. I mean, we were heading into what we're heading into now, and I still feel like there was more fish around then.
It's crazy. Your mind must be blown. Like you saw them, you fished the moratorium, you saw that. Yeah. And now it's like we're heading right back to it. It's unbelievable.
I mean, I fished differently than I did then, but like it's crazy. And like this year, I fished a lot this summer, and I had to travel. Like I never had to travel. I had to travel like far to find these fish. So, guys, again, I'm part of the problem because I'll post things up on Instagram and things like that, and guys are like, "Oh my God, look at the size of these fish he's catching." And I'd like to say like, "Oh, I'm catching those fish because I'm really good at what I do." But I mean, I think a lot of the reason I'm catching a lot, I not a lot, but I caught bigger fish this year is that I didn't see any fish under slot. There was no small fish to get in the way.
Wow.
So at those magic times, there was only the big fish coming through. And when I say that, I don't mean like a lot. I mean like 1 or 2, but like there was no little fish in the way. And that is really alarming to me because again, like before the moratorium, that's what happened out of Block. Like the best fishing was the lead up to the crash. So I see all those signs. To me, listen, I'm 51 years old, and the amount of time I've been fishing, it is still a small blot on the timeline of these fish's existence. So maybe I'm wrong, but it does not look good to me.
Oh man. Very concerning.
Hate to start your podcast.
No, it's all right. I want to hear it.
But I'm hopeful. But again, I think we all need to come together. You have people attacking the commercial fishery. You have people attacking the for hire. When there's a healthy fishery, there's room for all of that. And I eat fish. So I'm not one of those to say. I know a lot of guys scream game fish. I'm not one of those because I see what New Jersey does. I mean, a striped bass doesn't care how it died. It doesn't care if it died in a net. Doesn't care if it died speared. It doesn't care if it died being poached. A dead bass is a dead bass. So I'm realistic. Like, when Jersey passes on their game fish quota, they pass it on to the recreational guys. It doesn't matter. Like they sit there and say that they're this conservation state because they have a game fish status. But if you're passing the quota on to in bonus tags, it doesn't do shit for the fish,
Right.
So
man, yeah, the whole thing is such a mess. It's unbelievable. And
it's a mess because it shouldn't be a mess. Like we know so much about these fish. We know exactly when they spawn. We know what salinity, water. We know what they need. Right? They need. We shouldn't be fishing for them when they're spawning. We shouldn't even be fishing for them like leading up to the spawn, because I'm guilty of it, like catching fish like in April. Some of those fish haven't spawned yet. We see different stages. I see it like where I fish. You see different stages of the fish coming out and different fish going. And I've caught fish where I lift them up and there's like milk coming out of the fish. I'm like, this fish hasn't even spawned yet. So maybe we need to shorten the season a little bit. I hate to do that because I love the spring run, but we shouldn't be fishing. Most certainly shouldn't be fishing for fish that are in the rivers currently trying to spawn. We shouldn't be killing them. If you give these fish at least an opportunity to spawn 2 or 3 times, we'd be in a good state. And that's what we're trying to do. I think what they're trying to do with the slot is they're trying to protect certain year classes, and they're trying to at least let these fish spawn once, because some of these fish don't even have the chance to spawn,
Yeah.
So,
that's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like you're saying too. Like we have enough data on them. We know when they're spawning, where they're spawning. We could I'm thinking personally about the Raritan Bay. Like, we know when they're coming in there. We know when they're loaded.
It's almost clockwork, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Let these fish go up the river, right? Let them go up the river to spawn. Instead of sitting outside there and killing them.
Yeah, 500 boats on them.
Yeah, and that's the problem with social media too, right? And everybody thinks, oh, the fishing is so great because the Raritan's on fire, right? Where else is on fire? Nowhere else. And the Raritan hasn't been on fire the last couple of years.
Yeah.
I should not the last couple of, it wasn't on fire this year. It wasn't on fire so much, so, and again, guys will argue like, oh, well, I caught a 50-pounder. Yeah, well, you're not everybody, and it should have been a lot better than what it was.
Yeah.
And it's crazy because it was an incredible amount of fish, right? And like in theory, those fish should still be around. We're only allowed to keep a slot. Like, where are all those fish? Well, obviously there is some kind of mortality rate. Obviously there's definitely some poaching going on.
Yep.
Because those fish, those fish return. They have a genetic marker. They can tell where these fish come from, and they go back to where they spawn, and they go back to these same areas. They're genetically linked. There's differences within striped bass. Like, they can tell the difference between these fish, and it's not like, oh, they decided to go spawn in Chesapeake or they decided to go up to Maine.
Right.
Like those, in theory, those fish should still be there. So it shows you that that fish mortality is a real thing. Whether it is what they say it is, I don't know. But poaching is obviously a real thing because those fish should still be there.
And then the other problem that I was actually just talking about this with the last person I interviewed today is how the bunker have been getting like wiped out by these big trawlers that are just coming in and taking them all out. And one week they're there, the other they're gone. I mean,
right. And we know how. Right? So go back to like these fish only need a few things, right? They need a clean place to spawn. They need to be left alone while they spawn. They need to be able to spawn, right? They have to be alive, to spawn. Those big fish do help. I don't care. Guys I will respect hear them talk about like, oh, the big fish don't have the vitality in the eggs. They're not mammals. Like they've said, oh, they cut the fish open and the eggs are all dead. Well, I hate to break it to you, the eggs develop outside. They get fertilized outside of the fish. So I don't know what you're looking inside of a 50-pound bass and deciding that those eggs are dead. They haven't been fertilized yet. So and these are guys who like catch big fish and know stuff. But I think it's again, hopefully it's the optimistic. They want to say or justify killing big fish, but. They need the chance to spawn. They need the clean water, and they need bait. And the bunker is huge. And we let Canada come in and take bunker away so they can make, nonsense with it. Cosmetics and stuff that they use it for. It's just ridiculous. And we know it's such an important fish because we know the years that we see an abundance of them. We see whales and dolphins and stuff like that. And I haven't been seeing them in the numbers that we normally see them in. 10 years ago that we had a pretty good run of bunker and there was just whales. It was incredible. You're fishing and you're like watching out for whales, as you're casting. The whales are blowing peanuts out of the water, and we see when there's years of good bait fish around. But we've done again 3 choices. We've constantly made the worst choices possible, and and I don't see it getting any better. People that we're putting in charge are not conservationists. Lee Zeldin, charge of the EP. He's not going to do anything for us. I've fought with that guy when he was doing stuff down in the east end of Long Island. He was pulling shenanigans with us. And
oh, really?
Oh yeah. But they're all the politicians. They're all the same. I don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, Independent. They're all full of shit. And he's
I agree.
big big time full of shit. I mean, I watched him go to 2 meetings and tell 2 different groups of people 2 different things within days of each other. You know, he had a,
Wow.
you know,
Nice.
just, I mean, and then when you question him, he's like, oh, I don't know about that. And you're like giving him the numbers and the science and stuff like that. He's like, that's not what I hear. And it's like, well, what do you hear? Oh, I hear there's fish. Well, he wanted to open up the E's, you know, and again, like guys are going on about how great fishing is, and you know, he wanted to open up the E's for fishing. If fishing is so great, then why do you need to open up the E's? If there's fish all over the place, why do you need to open up the E's to fishing? Like that was his, you know, and you know, they couldn't answer the question. Like, oh well, because all the fish, you know, just the environmental changes, all the fish are stacked up in there. It's like saying buffalo hunting is great. All we have to do is open up Yosemite so we can kill them. You know what I mean? Like, fishing's not great. If you're looking to like open up the E's and you're looking to like, you know, I mean, you know, guys are making the same argument in Massachusetts years ago. Like, you know, the commercial guys didn't reach their quota. So their argument was like, well, we didn't reach our quota, so you have to extend the season. Like, well, I thought the fishing was so good. Why would you need to extend the season?
Yeah.
Like, you would have hit your quota if it was so good. Like, you know, the fish are pushing up. The water's, you know, there's so many excuses. The water's warmer now, so the fish are all up in Maine now. And, you know, they look at all these guys that get catching fish in Maine. I hate to break it to you, they're catching fish in Maine. They've always been catching fish in Maine and big fish in Maine. It sucked for a while and then it got good again. But like, it's guys who know better will sit there and argue to you like the fish are just a little bit offshore. The fish are up in Maine now. No, they were all over the place, and they're not expanding to where they were at one time. You know, you hear guys, oh, they're out in the 2 mile mark, or they're out, you know, they're out in the E's, or they've moved. They've always been there. I worked on the boats. We used to catch striped bass in the mud hole, fishing for bluefish. They were always out there. It's just now they're shrinking. You know, the schools are shrinking. So guys think, you know, that these fish have moved somewhere where we can't get them. You know, surfcasters optimistic. Oh, you know, the fish are just sitting out of casting range. That's why we're not getting them. There's plenty of fish around. We just can't reach them. They're just at the end of our cast. Come on. You know, you really think that's why the numbers are down, because you can't reach them? You know, the numbers are down because, you know, they're not like where they used to be. They used to be 5 feet off the beach. They used to be 2 miles off the beach, and now they're not. You know, that's why you're not catching them. But, you know, we could go on and on. I don't want to take up your whole podcast.
I love it.
I
love it, man. So you go to a lot of these meetings, these hearings that they have about the regs?
I do. You know, I used to be able to get out to them, but I do go online and I listen, you know, now that they have the opportunity, and it is best for you to get out and go to those meetings so they actually see you and you can actually speak. But I don't have the opportunity like I used to. Just work obligations and a son. You know, my wife and I work opposite schedules, so it's really hard to,
gotcha.
You know, but I do attend them. You know, I do go online and I do write all my letters, whether or not they're listening to me or not. But I write letters. I write a ton of letters and send them out. But, you know, again, I don't think, I hate to say they have failed us. I mean, you're sending out, you're having meetings, like it's all crammed into like this short time frame. Like, how do you even digest everything? How do you read everything that we've even read you when you're about to make a decision and you just put surveys out like weeks ago? Like, that's, you know, this is ridiculous. Like, you're like,
a lot of head scratching.
You know? Well, and then they keep kicking the can down the road, like, and they literally keep kicking the can down the road. Like, you should be working behind the scenes, like figuring out what are we going to do. And now, like, all of a sudden they're like, oh, what are we going to do? Like it's a last minute thing. Well, you knew this for years. The recruitment classes have been out there. We see whether you want to believe the science or not. Obviously, in my opinion, that they've got that down. Well, you know, guys will criticize, you know, well, how do they assess the year of young class? But we've seen it. You know, I mean, we see the 2015 year class. We were seeing them, you know, and then they fall into the slot, and then now they're all dead. But, you know, like that science, I don't know how they do it, but I think they got it down, because they'll tell you, you know, when it's going to be good and when it's not going to be good. You know,
that's pretty accurate.
Well, in my opinion, I mean, guys will argue, like, how do they possibly know that? How do they possibly do that? But I mean, we're seeing it. You know, you see tagged fish, you see the mortality rates, you see these things. I mean, you know, as much as I hate them, you know, I gotta live and die by the science. If you can't believe one end of it and not the other end of it, you're going to be that way,
right?
I guess.
True. Yeah. What was that piece of data that came out a few years ago? It said something like there was a mortality rate of like 50% for fish released by rec guys. Yeah.
I mean, I have no idea, and I mean, the way that they did that, it seemed to me like, I think they like released these fish in like a pond or something like that. It seemed a little bit like, you know, but you know what? There is ongoing research being done now. Like Massachusetts is like, they're literally they're giving tags to rec guys and stuff like that. So I think that science will be there. And I don't know that that's not true. I mean, I'm doing my part as far as that is, I mean, listen, circle hooks and I'm, I'm a plug builder, and I'm really starting it's not easy to do. It's not easy just to say, I'm going to put a single hook on there versus putting 2 treble hooks on there. The lures swim different. There's a lot of testing going on with that, as far as how your lure swims, but I'm moving. I'm like, I worked hard in the last 2 years to figure my lures out, and I'm putting one set of hooks on there because I see it. I mean, you see it. If the fish is bleeding and you're letting it go, it's likely going to die. I mean, especially if you get it in the gills or something like that.
Yeah.
You've really compromised that fish. I mean, these fish are tougher than I think maybe I've caught fish that, I mean, literally missing eyes and chunks out of them, and I mean, so I think they're relatively tough. But I mean, you got to protect. I think once you get into that gill area, you're going to kill that fish, and when you gut hook them, you're going to kill them. Otherwise, I think they're pretty resilient. But I don't know. I mean. Yeah, I got to tend to believe it. I mean, you got to err on the side of caution. I don't know if it's 50%, but I'm sure it is high. I mean, look, the Raritan, I mean, guys were fishing. All those fish couldn't have been poached, and all those fish didn't fall within the slot.
Right.
They couldn't have been killed. But where are those fish? So there's definitely a mortality rate out there, and like states like Massachusetts, they're doing tag programs where they're trying to figure out, like, they're allowing guys, you can you kind of time, it's not such an easy thing to do if you're on the surf, but if you're on a boat, you're timing, like, you're talking about like the method that you fish to, what kind of hooks you use, and they're timing the fight of the fish, and then you tag the fish, and they're seeing if these fish show up again. And so they're trying to get some data with that, and I think in the long run we'll have some better data out there. But I wouldn't be surprised if we're not far from that 50% rate. I mean, guys that know what they're doing, it's a different story. I mean, I use heavy gear. I'm not fighting these big fish for a long period of time.
Uh-huh.
The question that people can ask me all the time is, how long did that take you to get in? I'm like, a few seconds. I mean, it's a big fish, but I'm not fighting it for 15 minutes. I mean, so like, and again, I like to take pictures of fish, but I'll have my camera set up. If I'm parked in a spot for a while, I'll have my camera set up. And I literally have a timer on my watch where I can hit it on my Apple Watch, and I'd lift the fish out of the water, take a picture, drop the fish back in. If the picture came out, it did. If it didn't, too bad. The fish is gone. If I catch a bunch of fish, I take a picture of one fish if it's on my lure. Because it's But otherwise, I'm not sitting there fiddling around for taking multiple pictures with one fish. Half my more, they don't come out, but just you do have to take care of these fish. You do, especially in the summer months where I fish a lot. The water gets a little bit warmer. They are slow to. If you don't spend time with them, they're going to go belly up. I've had big fish go belly up, and I've swam out there with knowing that there's sharks out there, and freaking drag the thing back in and spend a few more minutes with it until it rips away from me and swims out. You got to spend time with them. So, I tend to believe that there's the mortality rate might not be 50, but I'm sure it's a lot higher than what we think. Mm-hmm.
So you do a lot of fishing with the wetsuit on? Is that?
I do. It's not so much that I swim as much as I used to, because there's so many sharks around, but it's a lot easier. I mean, I am going into spots where I would probably get, I would be over my waders, and it's just easier when you're climbing around rocks, and it's easier too if you were to get, like I did years ago, get blasted off the Breezy Point jetty, and
oh my God, let's hear that story.
Yeah, I mean, I was an idiot. I mean, I don't fish that jetty as much as I used to, but because I lived literally like I lived right there, so I would whatever. It's like this time of year, and it was a southeast blow, and and it was just during the day. I just was going out there, and I used to literally walk out on that jetty. I mean, I would jump from rock to rock. Now I crawl out there like I look like I'm a geriatric, because I've been blasted off of it and got hurt bad. But I went out there, and I'm sitting there jumping from rock to rock, and I take a couple of casts. I'm working my way out, and I get to the spot they call the Widow's Peak, and I'm right before the Widow's Peak. And it's at that time, it's like a little bit of a dip in the jetty where it's a little bit low. So if you do have a heave, it'll tend to wash right over the jetty at that area. And I go down. Actually, I'm on the top of the jetty, and I take a cast, and I get whacked. So I work my way down a little bit lower, because I'm like, all right, I might get a fish. I'm gonna have to land it. And I had just gotten out there, and I wasn't paying close enough attention that every once in a while there was some rollers coming in. So I get down, and all of a sudden I see like this set of waves coming. And I'm like, oh crap. And I'm at a low point of the jetty and I'm down low. And I got washed. I got banged around on the jetty and then sucked out.
Oh my God.
And luckily I kept everything intact. I was luckily I was wearing a wetsuit, and then I'm floating out there, and then another wave, and another set of waves comes in, and it literally picks me up and sets me right back on top of the jetty, like somebody had picked me up and placed me down.
Wow.
So all these guys come running over. They're like, "You all right? You all right?" I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Holy shit! I'm really lucky." But I did get rolled around in the rocks for
Oof.
a bit. But my adrenaline was like kind of like rushing, So I'm like, Jesus. I'm like, whew, I'm lucky. And I start casting again.
Jeez.
and then all of a sudden, like the adrenaline's like running down, they're coming down off me, and I look down and there's a gash in my wetsuit and there's blood literally like pumping out of my wetsuit.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, oh no. So I'm like, let me get off this jetty because the adrenaline's going. And I'm like, I can feel the pain in my leg, and I'm like, I think I got a broken leg. But I'm like, but I can stand because the adrenaline is just like shooting through my body of what just happened. So I literally get off the jetty, and I mean, there's just blood everywhere. And I fractured my, it didn't break it, but I chipped the bone in my shin.
Ooh.
And I still, as I'm talking to you right now, I just looked down and rubbed it. The scar is still there. So yeah, that was a doozy. But
wow, was that the closest call?
Yeah, I don't even know if there was a close call. I mean, regardless.
I mean, you almost ended up getting swept off the rocks out of the inlet.
Well, I did. Look, I was, I'm a good swimmer, and I had, that's the thing. That's why I wear a wetsuit. That's why I wear a wetsuit. Because you float. I mean, that's the good thing about a wetsuit. I don't bring a lot of equipment out with me. I don't have a ton of stuff on my belt. I usually only carry like a 2-tube bag. I'm not heavily loaded, so I'm going to be loaded down. But I guess that would probably be, one of my closest things. I've gotten stuck in the mud in Jamaica Bay and had the tide coming up. That was, even though it's less dramatic. I mean,
let's hear about that one.
Hey, that's happened to me a couple of times.
Jeez.
Yeah, well, Jamaica Bay is like such a muddy freaking place. I've gotten stuck in the mud a couple of times, and I mean that's the good thing about waders. Like just boot foot waders. You can, when you do wear waders in those situations. I had one time I had to get out of my waders. Get out of my waders and get my waders unstuck in the mud. But I'm wading out there in some of those mud flats, and that less dramatic, but a little bit more. I was a little bit more like this could end bad.
It's funny though, because the guy I just interviewed, his closest call was with waders. He fell into a patch of like quicksand or whatever that he didn't expect, and he had to crawl out of the waders and somehow escape.
Yeah, I've done that in the water. I had to do that once in the water.
Oh my God.
I was like, uh-oh. I'm like, I can't get, I was like trying to pull a little bit. And I'm like, well, I think if I actually can get these, but I had to it was a scary situation. I had to literally get one leg out, get the other leg out. And, and then I'm getting stuck. I'm in there and now I'm out of the waders. I'm like, got my fishing rods and stuff, and I'm getting stuck even in there trying to get the waders out. And, it's just like, oh God, it was a mess. Jeez. I was covered in black, stinky, oh God.
Oh my God, it probably smelled horrible.
But yeah, that's, a couple of, you've been doing it long enough, but now I've got a son, and, I'm not as reckless anymore. I do, like I said, I go out on the jetty, and I'm, if you would have saw me, if you would have saw me even 10 years ago going out on the jetty versus how I go out on the jetty now, it's sad. But I'm
totally different, right?
Just a different mindset. You got something a little bit more to live for. You don't even constantly, not that I ever wanted to die, but now you're just like, I kind of got to get home to my son and my wife.
You think about it more,
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah. Especially now, these sharks and stuff around.
I was just going to ask you, do you think the shark thing has gotten worse?
Oh, no doubt. I mean, I hate to say worse. It's worse for me, whether that, but yeah, I mean, there is way more sharks in the last couple of years, and it's really affected the fishing. It's just affected even the approach of how you fish. Like, I'm doing things differently now, trying to get away from them, and the fish are acting different,
What are you doing differently?
Well, I mean, I'll just give you a story of when I first started to realize I'm going to have a different approach. I was fishing deep, and even I've done seminars and I've done podcasts and I've done articles and all about fishing deep water, because that's, for me, that was the consistency for a bite of getting big fish. And now I feel like those fish are really reluctant to come up off the bottom. And if they are, there's a good chance, especially in the summertime, they're going to get eaten. So I'm not even fishing for them because I'm not going to sit there and feed striped bass to the sharks. If I'm getting whacked by sharks, I'm moving. I'm not going to sit there and feed 30, 40 pound fish to sharks, but those fish are real reluctant to come up off the bottom because I think they don't want to get eaten. And one night I'm sitting there and I'm fishing. It's really what finally made me because I wasn't catching them like the previous 2 years. Like I thought I had it all figured out. I was like, oh, this is what I got to do. I got to jig the bottom, in areas that you typically wouldn't jig the bottom, and that's where they're sitting. And I just, I'm sitting there one night, like this summer season was just a lot slower, and I hadn't figured it out yet. I'm out on this rock. And I'm out a decent ways. Not deep. I shouldn't say decent ways, but it's deep. In front of me is over my head. The rock I'm on is probably like up to my nose, like the water. So I'm not deep, but I'm sitting there. I'm casting. I'm throwing the jigs, and and I'm not getting anything. And I can see like where I'm at because it's a little bit of like a reef, but right in front of me it just drops off, and I can see like up on like that reef. There's definitely bait there. You can kind of see like when the water almost looks like it's like shaking, it's not when the bunker are like totally schooled up and it's obvious, but like sometimes you'll see like mullet, you'll see like bunker, like the water just is like vibrating a little bit. And so I'm like, there's fucking bait right here. I'm like, the bass have this bait pushed up like on this reef. I'm like, why am I not getting the fish? So now I'm like, you know what? I'm like, they're not on the bottom, so I'm going through like my plug bag, and I don't have a ton of stuff because I was so convinced like that this is what I needed to do. But I always carry, like my trollers and things that I make, like, and I'm not getting any hits. And I'm like, I'm like, so strange. I'm like, they must be keyed in on whatever this is. So finally I'm getting ready to leave. So I'm like, you know what? Throw my freaking lights on. And I look at the water, and the bait fish was bass. They were the bait. They were the bait. They were up on that reef. And they were schooled up like you would see like what bait does when something's trying to eat it. And I'd gotten shocked. I'd gotten shocked the previous night over there. So there were sharks there, but I just didn't equate to me that, the bait fish was actually the striped bass. They were the ones being fed on, and they were pushed up trying to stay away from the sharks.
Man.
So,
Holy
and
crap.
and it's what you see now, like the last couple of years, like getting back on the bite a little bit is that where I used to fish deep water, those fish are not in there, or at least they're reluctant to bite. And so now the fish are just they're fishing. You're fishing shallower spots. Where I at least typically wouldn't get big fish. The big fish are pushed up on the flats. They're pushed up in the shallows, and that's because they're trying to get away from the sharks. So that's just totally the last couple of seasons, like putting that together. Just like, oh, you got to approach this differently. These fish they're reacting to the sharks. And one is you can every once in a while you throw it to a deep spot and you reel up the fish and he gets eaten. So you're like, oh, what's the point? So yeah, just fishing a little bit different, fishing like shallow or boulder fields and estuaries and things where these fish wouldn't typically be in the summer months, but they're there because they're trying to get away from sharks. So anywhere that I felt like there was like a tight squeeze for bass to kind of get in, that's where they would be.
Hey everyone, just a quick break to remind you about the Brooklyn Fishing Club membership. Because this isn't just another fishing club, it's a full experience. Here's what you'll get when you join. 2 bonus podcast episodes every month, 20% off all gear in the shop, a free hat and t-shirt when you sign up, guided trips, invite-only club events, online seminars with special guests, and access to VIP destination trips. All that for just $100 a year. That's less than a weekend tackle run, and it supports the podcast so we can keep bringing you stories from the water. Sign up now at brooklynfishingclub.com and become part of the crew. Do you do a lot of eeling?
I don't. I do. I did. I should say I haven't used eels in a long time, and I did use it this summer because I felt like that was going to be like a game changer, like trying to like fish in some of these shallower spots. I was like, you know what? I bet you eels, but then I went to soft plastics and my ratio didn't stop at all. So I threw eels for a couple sessions and I was all like convinced, like, because I had one night and it was a good night, and it was all on eels. But then when I switched over to soft plastics, I got them on that. So I was kind of like, all right, I went back to soft plastic. So, I mean, it's definitely your best odds, but it's just the best, especially like I was traveling this summer. I wasn't fishing like local. I was, going to different, sleeping in my truck and everything gets like just gross with eels. So, if you can get away with, like if I go out one night and I catch like, a bunch of fish on eels, and if I catch half that on the soft plastics, I'm like, you know what, I'll use the soft plastics.
It's worth it.
If I get half that if I get half of what I would have gotten on fishing a needlefish, you know what, I'll fish a needlefish.
I got you.
Especially when you're traveling, trying to keep them things alive in your
I bet
vehicle.
that's crazy. Yeah.
it's just, I'm like, you know what? And just trying to get good deals. You're trying to explain to the guys, when I'm traveling to tackle shops, and these guys have no idea, my local shops, if I want good deals, the guys will help pick them out. But, you go into a shop, they have no idea who you are. And you're like, listen, I'm throwing them from the beach. They're like, to give you whatever.
Yeah, just take these. Yeah.
Yeah, you get and you're trying to explain to them, like, listen, man, I'm fishing from the surf. You don't need big eels. I'm like, no, I need to be able to cast them.
Right.
And
yeah.
so it's not I'm not a big eel guy. I mean,
Gotcha.
again, if I had a fish to survive, then I'd probably be chunking an eel an awful lot. But this is recreation, so I do what I like to do, and I do what brings me enjoyment, and that's not always the case with throwing eels.
Gotcha. You mentioned you build your own plugs.
Yeah.
Nice. You use those a lot, I guess.
Yeah, no, I pretty much primarily fish my own lures. I mean, less
Cool.
if I'm fishing soft plastics. I fished soft plastics just recently because of the getting fish in shallower water. But I fish almost exclusively my plugs. I mean, I'll fish some other plugs, but I mostly just fish my own stuff.
How'd you get into that?
Yeah, geez. I mean, there's an awful lot to probably leading up to it. I mean, I just I've always been into fishing and stuff like that. I guess I told you I worked in Sheep's Bay and stuff like that. So I was always a fanatic about fishing, and I was always around old salty guys, and some of those guys built plugs, and some of those guys, and I think it's just, with my dad was very handy. So I was handy. I was always working with wood and doing stuff like that. And then I think just like the off season, I would just be, like at a certain time in my life, and I still am, I was just so obsessed with fishing, and I was, young, and I didn't have the money to travel to go down to Florida and fish. So in the wintertime, I'd just be literally chewing at the bit to get out to fish and just to do something with fishing. So I just started tinkering with plugs and modifying them a little bit. And then, there was that website, Stripers Online. They had a plug building forum, and then I saw guys building, and we share information, and I just started, getting into it. It's been probably 25 years now that I've been building. Not at the level that I'm at building now, but I started then, and it was probably that Stripers Online, just the original guys that would, post and share stuff and bounce ideas off each other. So I, bought myself a lathe, and just started building.
That's awesome, man. So do you do the trade shows and stuff in the winter?
Yeah, I do. With the son now, and trying to balance fishing and work and a wife, I don't have as much free time. But I do typically do 2 shows a year. I build really, I do a lot of intricate stuff with them just because I enjoy doing that. So I don't build a lot per se, but I typically do 2 shows a year. I'll do one out in Rhode Island, and I'll try to do one local around here. So I don't do a ton of the shows. It takes me a long time to build, just trying to manage life and just to keeping up the quality of what I build. So
gotcha.
Yeah. But it's again, I do it because I don't make a ton of money off of it. I don't, because the time, when you start looking at the time that you're putting into it, I could probably make more money collecting cans because I spend an awful lot of time on them. And but I do it because it gets me through the off season. So I do it out of more of a love of the fishing. So
gotcha. That's cool. And where can people find your lures?
So you can find me at the shows. You can find, when I'm up and building, I'll post them on my Instagram page, which is C Voorhies. Last name is Voorhies. And then on my Facebook page, I have a Voorhies Customs, a group page, so you can join that group when they come available. It's usually during the winter when I'm not fishing, kind of post stuff up. And then I'll be at the Saltwater Edge does a show out in April. That's out in Rhode Island. And then I do the Surfcasters Journal show. I think it's called Striper Day. That's usually the Martin Luther King weekend or somewhere around that time. That's in January, and I do that show, so you can find them there. But if you go into my Facebook group page, you send a thing, and I'll invite I approve you. That's Voorhies Customs on Facebook. I'll put that in, and I'll post some stuff up there from time to time. Yeah.
So is your table one of those tables that gets mugged instantly? There's a giant line.
I'm usually done in about 15 minutes.
There we go. Nice.
I'm usually sold out pretty quick. Well, it's also I don't bring. Some of these guys bring 300 plugs.
Yeah.
I'm I have 100. So but so I do generally sell out pretty quick.
That's
so
awesome.
It's good. And it's great because then I get to go hang out.
Yeah, you should do like a time lapse video of how quickly, show how quickly it sells out.
It's, it's so crazy because like leading up to it, even like usually like the night before, I'm up the night before still like putting hooks on, putting stuff in, trying to get the amount of time that I put through. Like I stress myself out trying to get like these done. I'm like the amount of time, and then I just go to these, and even then, like I drove to Rhode Island, drive like 4 hours to go, all this time, and then 15 minutes are done. It's
crazy.
It's crazy how, but it's fun. I like going. I like because I really could just sell them on my Facebook page and not have to do any shows. But I like to like meet the people that are buying them. I like to talk to the other builders. I like the whole experience of the shows, even though it can be super stressful trying to get, enough plugs to justify you traveling and doing all that and paying for a table. But I do really enjoy just like, talking to guys, guys showing me pictures of the fish they caught, coming up to the table with their kids,
Yeah. Yeah, it's got to be feel
great.
pretty cool to see guys showing you pictures of fish that they caught with your lures.
Oh, it's hysterical. I mean, even guys will just send me pictures, like on social media, they'll send me pictures, and in the middle of the night, I'll send my wife and be like, "Who the hell is messaging you?" I'm like, "God, this guy got a freaking monster bass. He couldn't help himself. He's like so excited, sending me the picture,
awesome.
So it is. It's pretty cool. My buddy Pete put it out to me one time. He said, he's like, isn't it kind of cool to know like you're kind of fishing all over the place? And I had never thought about it like that.
Yeah, true.
And just to know that your lures are just all, and I've sold lures into Hawaii, Puerto Rico, guys in the UK buying them, so they are all out there, even though I don't build a lot. I've been building for about, I guess probably close to 25 years now. So they are out there, even though I don't do a lot, but they've gotten their way into hands of people.
That's super cool. What's the biggest to be landed on one?
Maybe when is this podcast going to come out?
Within the next few weeks.
All right, so I'll have to hold off, but we might be seeing it. I can't always.
Wow.
I can't always say. There's been some big fish. I mean, there's been, from me myself even. There's been some big fish caught on. But I mean, there's been multiple 50s caught. I've, from other guys sending me pictures, but I had to. Well, maybe we'll come back after the season is
cool.
over and we'll talk.
Sounds good. What's your PB?
Again, maybe we'll talk.
Okay, gotcha.
Maybe we'll talk about. I think my personal best is yet to come, but I think it's gonna happen. We'll see. I can't. I don't know who's seen me and who hasn't seen me recently, so I can't. I don't want to talk if this is only going to come out in 2 weeks and I'm currently on a bite. So maybe we'll wait a little bit.
Secret.
Well, and the problem too with talking about like size of fish, you get like 3 people who react to your fish. You get guys who are like your good friends who are really happy for you. You get guys who are going to call you a liar, and then you got guys who are going to follow you. So there's usually not many very good options of talking about the size of the fish that you get. But let's just say if I were to God forbid die tomorrow, I'd be very content on the fish that I've caught. But I don't like to really brag about size and stuff like that. I mean, I'll talk to my friends about it. Because they're happy for me, but unfortunately, the majority of people, people can get a little creepy and a little weird trying to figure out where you're fishing.
Do you have any weird stories about stalkers while fishing?
Oh, geez, most certainly. I mean, I've had unbelievable, wacky stories about. I mean, literally just people sending you messages. I know where you're fishing, but I'm fine. I mean, following you. Like I've been in my truck. Like I was going. Like I had this guy one time and he like locked eyes at me, like driving. I'm going to work, and he like locked eyes on me and he whips around and does a U-turn and starts following me. And I'm like, and I could tell it was a fishing truck, he had like, he had the stickers and stuff on it. And the guy starts following me through Brooklyn. And I'm like, pal, I'm going to fucking work, And then he sees me like pull up in front of his school, and he's like, wow, what the hell?
Oh my God, but, that's funny as hell.
And I've had guys, I've had guys, send me literally like I've been fishing, like I fish a lot of urban areas, and I fish spots that like I'm breaking the law. I am climbing over fences. I'm doing things that I shouldn't be. I'm in places where I shouldn't be. And I had a guy who had once before followed me, and he sends me this spot that I'm at now. I used to wear a wetsuit in Jamaica Bay because I literally would swim out to marshes. I'd swim out to places in a wetsuit in Jamaica Bay.
Wow.
And this guy sends me a pin that from Google Earth is completely, totally unassuming, right? Like it's like you would not look at this on Google Earth and be like, that's a fishy spot. He literally sends me, I was there at 3 a.m. I get home the next morning, I wake up and he sends me a pin of exactly where I was standing. And I'm telling you, like, he wasn't there because unless he put a wetsuit on and went swimming, he wasn't there. And he's like, what do you think about this drain? And it wasn't a drain. He's like, does this look like a fishy spot to you? And I'm like, what the hell? Like, I'm like,
wow.
Yeah. Jamaica Bay is 10,000 acres. This guy sent me a pin of where I was standing. I have no idea. I'm like, the only thing I know is that I had my phone on me, I mean,
wow.
But I'm like, how did this guy go? This same guy, I come out of this spot that is totally a spot you're not allowed to fish. I can't even like give a hint of where it is because, guys might still fish it, but it is a totally illegal spot to fish.
Probably by the airport.
You said it, not me. And I'm coming out and it's like, again, it's like 3 a.m. And I literally come out of these bushes and the guy talked on the street in his car. He's like, hey, Chris, same guy. And I'm like, this. I'm like, oh, I'm like, hey, I'm like, what's up? He's like, hey, any fish? And I'm like, this. I'm like, Jesus Christ. I'm like, but, God named Dane. But I'm like, yeah, but like just weird stuff like that. It doesn't happen as much now, but like it used to. Oh my God. I mean, I literally would see, I'd be driving and all of a sudden I see guys like follow me, and I'm done fishing. I'm going to, I'm over in Mott Avenue and I'm going to White Castle and the guys like follow me to White Castle. I'm like, yeah, but yeah, just some weird. We could do a podcast of just weird stories besides those kind of things. It's just because the areas that I fish, just so many weird, strange things happen.
It's going to be my next question. What's like the weirdest stuff you've seen in an urban fishing environment?
Oh, I mean, I've seen guns being shot. I've seen guns in the water. I've been the crazy story. I mean, I tell you one story that's like I'm literally if this guy fishes, he might tell you the story, and it's about me. I'm in a wetsuit, and this spot that I used to fish in Jamaica Bay, it's probably like 300 yards of this flat, and then when you're walking out there, you're only up to like knee deep to like waist deep water, but eventually it gets up really deep. So I'd wade out all the way out on this flat, and there was a cut in this channel that the fish used to really use this channel to get into, this flat, because on this flat there would be like these holes and stuff like that were really productive. So I'm trying to get to this cut, and I'm out there and I'm fishing, and as the water would come up, you could actually swim across the cut, and then you could get up to where the water was actually higher. You could actually get out of the water and fish, but you couldn't have access from that side. So you had to basically swim in, and if you wanted to continue fishing it, you had to swim over the channel to get onto high ground and fish. And I'm fishing in there, and it's a moon, and I'm catching fish, and like the bunker are just coming, they're cutting through this channel, and the bass are just pounding them, and I'm getting like good fish. I'm throwing like one of these big tsunami shad, and then I'm just hammering the fish. And I know, like I'm like, I gotta get out of here. Because I gotta be able to get all the way back across this flat and get to where I'm parked. And so I feel like famous words. I'm like, all right, one last cast, and now and I get like a 35-pound fish, and it completely inhaled this. This is years ago, so the fish was, there was no slow. He was within, I could keep him, but I usually don't keep fish anyways. But this fish had completely inhaled. I don't know how he did it. Those big 9-inch tsunami shads with the big mustad hook, the big hook, the forged hook on it. He had completely the shad was gone. He ate it like it was completely, he was completely in his stomach, and I was like, oh crap. So now I've got like this 35-pound fish, and I know I've got like a good ways back, and I'm probably going to have a difficult time getting back. So I'm like, all right. So I take the fish, I put it on. I did keep a stringer at that time, and tied to my belt. So I put it on the stringer, and I swim over the channel, and I go to, I'm trying to find the flat, and the flat it's over my head. So I'm like, oh God. So now I've got like a 300-yard swim with this 35-pound fish, and my tackle bag and my rod. So I swim back over the channel to to the other side where I can get up on the thing, and I start to cinch everything down, like, you know, make sure like I got my boots tied tight, I got everything, so because I got a long swim ahead of me, and I'm, you know, and I'm huffing and puffing, and there's a couple of high spots that I can find that I can stand and I can rest a little bit, but I can't really walk in it because I'm literally like the water's like up to my nose, you know, like, so in some of those spots, so like I can stand and like rest a little bit and get my head above water, but it's just I can't walk through it, so like because that is one of the spots where I got stuck in the mud one time. So now I'm you know, kind of just, you know, shimmying across, swimming, and I'm headed for, you know, I know where I got to go because there's a street light and that's where I'm parked. And so I'm heading for that light. And as I get closer to it, I see there's a guy, he's sitting on the bulkhead there, and he's smoking, and he's got a big dog with him. So I'm like just heading towards that, and the dog picks me up. The dog sees me. The guy doesn't see me. The dog is like kind of like looking at the dog. The guy, I could see the guy kind of like looking like, what's my dog like bugging out about? But he's under the light, so he's looking out into the dark water. He doesn't see me. And now this is a shady area, so I'm also worried about what this guy, you know, like you know, where I'm at. You know, if I told you where I'm at, you'd be like, yeah, good reason to be concerned. And then he's got a freaking Rottweiler with him. The only dog I've ever been bitten by in my life has been a Rottweiler. And he's got this big freaking Rottweiler. And now as I get closer and closer, the dog picks me. The dog starts barking. The guy like stands up. He's like looking, and I come out of, you know, now I get up to where I can stand, and the guy's like this. He's like, what the fuck? He's like looking at me. He's like, you a Navy SEAL or something? You know? He's like, you know, this guy's in the middle of the hood. He sees this guy all dressed in black and everything. And then I'm like laughing, and then his dog, he's got his dog, and the dog's barking, and I'm like, I'm exhausted. I'm like, geez, I hope this guy doesn't like, you know,
kill you, right?
And he's just,
right
he's looking at me. He's like, he's looking at me, and then I pull the fish up, and he's like, holy, he's like cursing, he's going nuts. But he's like, I could tell he's like just excited. He goes to me, I've seen a lot of crazy shit in this neighborhood, but I ain't never seen a white boy dressed as a Navy SEAL coming out of the water dragging a baby whale. He's like, God damn, you know, this guy was like, he just was like, he couldn't believe it, you know, and he was smoking a joint. God. So he probably was, you know, as I got close, I realized he's smoking a blunt or a joint. I could smell it. He's like, probably totally bugged out. He's like, you know, it's like 3-4 in the morning. This guy's just like, went outside of his house to like go chill for a minute and sat on the wall with his dog, and this dude, you know, dressed like a ninja or something comes out of the water. He was like bugging out. So, you know, so that was, I mean, not a crazy story, but it was just a funny story because I can only imagine.
Oh,
like, and I've had guys see me, you know, coming out of spots, like, you know, like, what the hell, you know, police all of a sudden, you know, like I'm coming out of the bushes and police are like, what are you doing back there? Burying a body, you know?
Have you ever gotten any close calls for trespassing?
Yeah, I mean, I've been flat out got caught. My friends all laugh at me because I'm the best like liar. Like, you put me on the spot, like I'm quick witted, and I'm like quick with things. So I've told Ben, and I'll just like I'll blatantly just like lie like really good. Like, I came out of one time, I'm driving in an area, like I'm completely not supposed to be driving in this area. Like, it's not even a road, you know. And I come out, and the cop, you know, I literally come jumping out onto like the roadway, you know, because I'm like flying out, and this cop was like right there, and I see him, I'm like, oh crap. And I had my headlights off because I didn't want to blind cars as I was getting onto the road, you know. The cop whips behind me. He's like, what are you, and he says to me, what are you doing back there? He's like, what are you, burying bodies or something? And he's like, you know, wanting me to get out of the car. I'm like, no. And I'm in like my waders and all my fishing stuff. So I'm like, no, I'm fishing. He's like, you can't drive in there. I'm like, yeah, I can. I'm like, I got the 4x4 permit to drive there. He's like, what? I'm like, yeah, the sticker on my back of my car, that's a permit. You can drive in there. The cop's like, look at me. He's like, oh, I didn't know that. It was a breezy permit. I couldn't be driving in there. I just told the cop, I'm like, yeah. I'm like, you're allowed to. I'm like, there's an access road over there. You're allowed to drive. The guy's like, oh, I didn't know that. I'm like, yeah, no. He's like, why'd you have your headlights on? I'm like, it's a brand new car. I'm like, it's automatic lights. I didn't even know. You know, I had my headlights off because I didn't want anybody to see me coming out of where I was coming out of.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm like, and it was a brand new, you know, it was a brand new truck. I'm like, the automatic headlight things didn't come on yet. He's like, oh, all right. He's like, Jesus. He's like, you know, he's like, I saw you come out of there. He's like, oh boy, I'm gonna have some hell of a night, you know. It's like, he's totally letting me go because I'm telling him like, yeah, you see the permit on the back of my car. I'm like, yeah, it's for Breezy Point, which I'm nowhere near. You know, stuff like that, you know, and just,
that's great. You
know, fishing in the North Shore, you know, in areas like they all think like, you know, they have private beaches and stuff like that. So you get stopped by the police in there a bunch, and I just say, my Uncle Jeff, he lives over here on this street and there. I just, you know, parking, you know, lie. You know.
Just make shit up.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, yeah, but been totally busted in so many places. I mean, I've literally hid, like gotten down and like hid, just go in the water and like squat down and hide as they're looking for you.
You're pretty much a Navy SEAL. I mean, that guy wasn't that far off. You know?
Well, there's not too many people that wetsuit Jamaica Bay.
Yeah, true. True.
But,
so do you live in Brooklyn now, or do you live out on the island?
No, I don't. My family my mother's side that has all ties to Brooklyn, but we've been in the Rockaways for a while now.
Cool.
My mother actually grew up on Voorhees Avenue.
Oh, nice.
Which for the guys that don't know is in your podcast is my last name.
Yeah.
So she grew up on Voorhees Avenue, and they owned a bar in Sheepshead Bay, Brooklyn. They owned a bar called Captain Walters. So as a kid, that's how I was introduced to all the old salty guys that would come off the boats, the party boats there, and
So what was it? What was it like when you were younger in Sheepshead Bay? Were there a lot of boats?
Oh yeah. Oh no. It was insane. It was great. And like I said, my uncle owned Captain Walters, and all those guys would come in, and then he eventually. My mom was dating Joe Miller, who ran the Atomic. He owned the Atomic, and my mom was dating him, so I'd be on the Atomic all the time. And then Joe Miller he went down and he started doing whale watching up at the Cape. And then my uncle Desi, who owned the bar, ended up buying the Atomic from him, and he ran the Atomic. And then so I worked on those boats, the Atomic, and then he joined forces with Al Coley with the Betty W. So I worked on the Betty W. They actually changed the name. He sold the Betty W, and then they put the Betty W name on the Atomic at that time. And then I worked on that boat. And so it was really cool. And just as a kid, the Captain Walters was kind of like it was a huge, they had two locations after they sold the first one. The first one was on Nostrand and Emmons, and it was a huge place. And I used to go there during the day a lot because, either I'd be working for my uncle as a kid, like, just shining the brass in the bar, or, just my mom didn't have a babysitter that day. My mom would, waitress. So I'd be there during the days. And during the daytime, you'd get a lot of the fishing guys. You get a lot of the old guys from the boats, the mates, and the customers coming in. So I was just kind of like a little bar fly, whether I should have been or not as a young kid at that bar.
That's
So
awesome.
I was always around old salty guys, all the old sea hags, the women that worked on the boats and stuff like that. It's just such a cast of characters. You could have wrote a book about
I
the
can't
guys
even
who used to come in
imagine.
there.
It's probably so cool.
But it was a great kid, especially for a kid who was interested in fishing, and it was just kind of a great place to kind of like have you as your place to hang out. These old guys will all take me under their wing, and they teach me knots and stuff like that. And, and then eventually I'd start working on their reels and stuff like that. And I got good at working on like their pen reels. I used to, work on all the squitters and stuff like that, cleaning them up for those guys. And it was a cool place as a kid to grow up. It was kind of like the hub for my family. We all worked there at some stage of our life, and played a big important role in our lives. And it was just kind of probably led to in part who I am today as far as fishing wise.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, but I didn't live in Brooklyn. My family, my mom had moved. She moved out to California briefly. That's where she met my father. And then they both came back to New York, and we lived in Rockaway. So I've been living out in Rockaway. And then after Sandy, I lost my place in Sandy in Rockaway. So I went out. I came out
sorry.
to. Yeah, no. I mean, the house is. I mean, I was. Listen, it was. It's just. It's all back now. But I'm out in. I left with Sandy. I came out to Long Island, so I'm out in an area called Harbor Isle, which is a little hamlet off of Island Park. So
Nice.
I'm out in Long Island, but I still go. My wife owns a bar in Rockaway. My family's still all out in Rockaway, so
Cool.
I'm out there all the time. And I go to Sheepshead. Couldn't get away from Sheepshead Bay. I've been working in the school in Sheepshead Bay for the last 25 years.
There you go.
Yeah, and still just your Brooklyn Fishing Club. So I'm
this is perfect.
even though I don't live in Brooklyn, but my roots are my roots are in Rockaway. Like I said, but it's funny. My mom grew up on Voorhees Avenue, which is my last name. Well, that's not her maiden name, but she ended up meeting my father in California, whose last name was
What are the
Voorhees.
odds on that? That's crazy.
Yeah, so if you guys are familiar, your listeners are familiar with Brooklyn, Voorhees Avenue. So and my family was some of the original on my dad's side. It's named Voorhees Avenue because they were some of the original settlers of before it was New York. It was New Amsterdam.
Oh, wow.
And my dad's side is part Dutch. So my ancestors, my great whatever father came over in the mid 1600s, and they settled the flatlands and Flatbush, those areas there. So that's
Wow, that's crazy.
So it's kind of funny that my mom would go to California and meet the guy who is a descendant of some of the original settlers.
Yeah,
of
you're
New
like
York.
a native New Yorker.
Yeah, it's funny, you know. And I didn't even, you know, realize that until I recently, you know, a few years ago, not, you know, probably like 15 years ago, did a genealogy thing and traced it all back. And I'm like, oh, what are the odds? What are the odds?
Yeah,
And
for
here I
real.
am,
That's
still,
crazy.
still working in Brooklyn, you know.
Yeah, you can't escape.
Yeah.
Stuck forever. Before we wrap up, one last reminder. The Brooklyn Fishing Club membership is live. 2 bonus podcast episodes every month, discounts, free gear, and access to our trips and events. It's only $100 for the year. Go to brooklynfishingclub.com and lock in your membership today. But I want to circle back. We'll do a part 2 once it gets a little colder, because I want to hear about your PB and I want to hear about this bite that you're on right now once it's safe to talk about.
That sounds great, Victor. You know, thanks for giving me a chance. I'm a big fan of your podcast. I listen.
Thank you.
I got to get hold of one of your Biggie shirts. My wife is a huge.
I know.
My wife is a Brooklyn fan. You know, she's and she's a huge Biggie fan. I love that shirt. I'm always going on.
I
there.
wish
like,
I could get you one.
No.
My business partner won't let me print them anymore. He doesn't want us to get sued. So I don't know.
Yeah.
But if we ever get the green light to do it, I mean, we actually did email his estate. And we had this like tracker thing on the email where we could tell when they opened the email, and they opened the email like 12 times, but they just never responded to us. So I don't know. Maybe we tried to pitch them on it, you know, because I mean, that was like our best selling shirt.
It's awesome.
Sold
it's such
like
a great
10,000 copies of that thing, you know, it was
it's such
crazy.
A great But I'm a huge fan of your podcast.
Awesome.
I love
Thank you,
the
man.
different cast of people, from, you know, the spear fishermen you have on there to all the different cast of characters that you have on
I
there.
appreciate it.
It's a great podcast.
Thank you for
keep it
listening.
up,
I appreciate
and
it.
thanks for having me part of it.
Awesome, dude. Definitely. We'll definitely do a part 2. We'll be in touch.
All right, sounds good, man. You have a good one.
You have a good night.
Don't you walk on me.